Thank you so much for joining us. This is the deliberations for the City Planning Commission hearing on November 16, 2020. During deliberations, City Planning Commission members review cases and take action by voting. There is no participation by applicants or the public. Dave, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. We will hear the first case, case number 1E-07-20-21, 55 through 99 Federal Street, to construct one 9-unit multifamily dwelling, one 8-unit multifamily dwelling, and to consider an alternative parking plan for 2 spaces, an action requiring City Planning Commission approval. We need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Marlin. And second from Carrie Carroll. Okay, discussion.
I like it. I think it's a good use of the space. I love that a bunch of the housing is going to be accessible to folks who are either unhoused right now or in danger of being unhoused. It's kind of an oddly shaped little area that they're trying to exploit to the best of the site. And I don't see any, I know we'll go through the requirements and waivers one by one, but none of them struck me as unreasonable. So I think it's good for the neighborhood. I think it's good for the city. There are literally thousands of families waiting for housing. So this is another, 20 or 30 on the books. I think that's
right.
Good.
And it's also very efficient use of the space. Very, very clever.
Agreed. I know it's a little off of our current zoning code, but the Rochester 2034 plan talks about density over and over and over and over.
Right.
One of the ways you get density is by using more of the available space.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have any negatives. I agree with all the comments by Eugenio and Carol.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other concerns before we go through the requirements for waiving?
Hi, the only concern that I had is the parking, because it is such a small little narrow spot that once they do fill up that little parking lot that they do have designed, my concern is that people will still park on both sides because of how it is. But that's just my only concern. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Let's look at the requirements for the need to be waived on page 2.
So what I'll do is while you guys are referencing page 2 in the staff report, I'll hold the site plan so that way we can kind of see how these words tie into the drawing itself.
Okay.
Yeah, so go on, Dave, sorry.
All right. So we'll look at B1, the square footage. Then they're proposing 32,689, and it's required 5,100. Don't see a major problem with that. I think, as Kerry was saying, it's optimizing the size of that lot.
Yeah, so if I may, just for our new commission members, so what this requirement is that there's a lot requirement for the number of units proposed, and the requirement here is that the lot area be 51,000 square feet, and the lot that they're utilizing is only about a little north of 32,000 square feet. And so then Carrie made the point of, while the zoning might be a little behind, the comp plan does call for density. That's kind of giving. So right here, I'm kind of doing an outline of the lot itself. And this is the 31,000 square feet. And if it was strictly in accordance to the zoning code, the requirement would be for 51.
Yeah, and in this neighborhood too, the houses are fairly small. The lots are fairly small. The houses tend to take up the bulk of the lot. So it's consistent with what's around it as well. I mean, I know this is probably the big waiver that we have to do because that is a big jump from 33,000 feet to 51,000 feet. It's almost half. But it's consistent with the neighborhood. It adds density so that you have the number of people that you need to support a dynamic urban environment. And I think it works for this particular plot, which faces a giant wall that houses, blocks off RTS. So it's not like you're adding urban density on top of density on top. No, it's looking into a parking lot essentially. So I would be comfortable waiving this one.
Mm-hmm. Right, anyone else? Any other concerns? All right. Now we look at C1. The required setback for the front yard was 14 feet, and they're proposing 19. And I believe that the applicant explained why they were looking at wanting to move it back to the porch line of the units, and that makes a lot of sense. And I'd be more than willing to waive that. Any concerns?
Well, they actually said, so the buildings are back at 19, but the porch actually comes up to 14, right?
Yes.
Right.
The porch actually meets the requirement. That was a good solution to me.
Yeah. I think it would look massive if you brought it any closer to the street.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Okay, so if no concerns, we'll waive that. All right. Moving down to front yard F1. No front yard parking. The proposed 2 full parking spaces and a small portion of the 2 additional spaces to be located in the front yard. And I think she explained that as well when looking at that setback in the front.
Yeah, so I just want to share that what I do in a code review side of things for new members. So as you can see, we have a building on either side, and the building is here. And so, but the parking is going before the building. And so that is where the front yard parking comes into play. It's not technically allowed in the zoning code. So they are looking for a waiver because there are parking spaces in front of a building here.
Okay. Any other concerns? All right. Now we're looking at F1G, 10-foot setback or 3-foot decorative fence with landscaping, and they're proposing an 8-foot setback with landscaping, no fence proposed. And I think that makes sense.
Right.
I think for the same reasons that we looked at the previous setbacks. Any other discussion on that one?
Oh.
Okay. Now we move down to F2, landscaping island. No island is proposed. However, the lot has only 2 parking rows, 1 drive aisle, which does not allow for an island unless the size was expanded. And I think she mentioned that in the proposal
So
for the presentation.
For those that don't dabble in parking lots all day, there is a requirement in the zoning code that we have a landscaping island that is intended to kind of break up the sea of asphalt a little bit, and it typically equates to the size of a parking spot itself, sometimes serving as a pedestrian refuge, which is why we include it in the zoning code. So for those that are still familiarizing themselves with the zoning code, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about landscape islands.
All right, any other concerns with F2?
None.
Okay, so that covers the basic requirements that we're looking at for the parking, and now we're looking at the alternative parking plan. And if you can put that up.
Yeah, so they tried to, or not, didn't try, they proposed waiving 2 sites using 2 on-street parking sites, which we know they can't do because that's a side street and there's really no, as our new commissioner has pointed out, there's no parking there anyway. So that would be a bit of a fib. But they didn't attribute anything to the 2 bike racks that they have on site, and they didn't attribute anything to the fact that they had literally adjoined the RTS station. So I think if we credited RTS with 1 space and the bike racks with 1 space, that would cover the 2 spaces that they need.
Yeah.
And I don't see a huge impact on the neighborhood for 2 parking spaces.
No,
So I'd be
and
willing
I
to
think
waive
I would agree that the number of people who may have cars even will be less than the parking spots that they have available.
yeah, agreed.
Okay. Any other concerns with the alternative parking? All right, hearing none. Anna, is there anything else that we need to do as far as waivers?
Nope. I appreciate the attention that you gave to. Well, did we actually? Yes, I spoke too soon. So with the waivers that you're giving to, we need to attribute a numerical value to 2 spaces. So you have to dedicate 1 space to X alternative and 1 space to Y alternative. So
Okay. I think Carrie mentioned that we'll give 2 spaces. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 space for the 2 bicycle racks, and then 1 space for being adjacent to public transportation on East Avenue and what's the other side street?
East Main and
It's
East
Main.
Main.
East
Yeah.
and Cedar Terrace or Cedarwood Terrace as a stop.
All right. You all set with that, Anna? All right. Any other discussion? Any other concerns? All right. So all we need to do now is just vote. Anyone? Any other concerns? Comments? All right. All those in favor, and we'll go by our commissioner numbers.
Aye.
And give your name just in case.
I'm sorry, Carrie Carroll, aye. Brad Flowers is also saying aye. He's got thumbs up and he's nodding and waving.
Okay.
Harding, aye.
Eugenio, aye.
Milton Pichardo, aye.
Dave Watson, aye.
Markiba Williams, aye.
And I think that's a 700, if I'm not mistaken.
yep,
Right.
a
So
vote
Yes, go ahead, Anna.
of 700. The motion passes.
All right. Thank you so much. So that's all that we have for this evening, and because we approved to adjourn the case 2 until next month. So that being said, thank you for your time and your consideration, and we'll see each other next month. And this case is closed, and this hearing is closed. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.